So why does Deakin use the CASPer test is the question which I know you're asking. Well, the Australian Institute for Teaching and School Leadership, which is one of our national regulators, requires non-academic entry for assessing all students who are coming into teaching. In that sense, we want to be able to become registered as teachers and complete our initial teacher education program. But at the same time, we need to be able to select for the right capabilities and the right attributes for people coming into teaching. So that's what the CASPer test is all about. It's also a requirement of our registration as an initial teacher education provider, like all other Victorian and all other university providers across the country as well. So what it does is it allows for a more holistic assessment of applicants beyond just your ATAR score or subject scores that you might have had. So in that sense, coming into teaching involves not just your academic performance and an assessment of your academic performance prior to coming into teaching, but also your non-academic performance as well, and those criteria, those sorts of attributes that will help you become a teacher. So the CASPer test is actually the computer-based assessment for sampling personal characteristics is what it stands for. But in more simple terms, it's basically an online test. It uses video scenario-based situational judgments, and it allows us to look at your suitability to become a teacher and for a career in teaching. So Jo, how does the CASPer test work?
So it's a video-based tool and text-based tool. So as Damien has said, it's a computer-based assessment for sampling personal characteristics. That's the acronym then there, and it's an online situational judgment. So what that means is that you have 12 sections of that, 8 are video-based and 4 that are text-based situations. So you'll watch a video, a short video of about 1 minute, and then you'll be followed by that. You'll be asked 3 open-ended questions, which then allow you to respond in your own manner to what your personal traits would allow you to do. And those, so you have that time to be able to make those answers. There are text-based answers as well, so you'll get a little screen that's got a question as well, and you'll be able to, you're asked to answer or provide a response to each of those questions as well.
So perhaps we should talk a bit more about what the CASPer test is actually testing, Jo.
So as Damien has mentioned, these are all the non-academic attributes. So obviously you've got an ATAR or some other format to provide your academic credentials, but these are all the aspects of teaching and the teaching career that are very important to that career. So things like communication and collaboration, ethics and empathy, all of these things, problem solving, professionalism, equity and motivation. These are all the types of attributes that we absolutely need and want in our teachers.
So maybe we should have a look at how are the questions actually being assessed, Jo?
So each question is given a 1 to 9 rating. So your response is sent to assessors. So each question, so question 1 will go to the same assessor. So that assessor will just do all of question 1. The next assessor will do all of question 2. So you are rated amongst your peers. So as I say, assessors mark 1 question only. Each section is scored by a different assessor. The assessors cannot see your personal information. They do not know who you are. They just see the response that you've provided, and they rate that response that you've provided. You receive a CASPer raw score, and this places you on a bell curve to show how you are performed in relation to your peers. And then applicants are compared to the cohort of the students who sit that test on the same date. The scores are, the CASPer result is eligible for 1 year, and students can only sit the test once per year.
So Jo, we've had a couple of questions coming in. Perhaps we should go to some of the questions. Yep. Do we need to have completed the CASPer test from Declan to get into a teaching course prior to receiving an offer as a Year 12 student? The answer, Declan, is you need to have completed your CASPer test to actually continue in a teaching course. And Ish has asked a question noting, I have already submitted my application, and Ish can use that CASPer test already?
So if it's in this selection period, absolutely, yes.
Terrific. And we've also got a question about how the test is graded. And, just to respond to that question, remember the assessors are trained to mark each of the questions in the CASPer test, and then they're marked and you get a score out of a rating between 1 to 9, as Joe was just talking about there. And then all of the results for that cohort that have gone through the CASPer test are put onto a normal distribution curve, or a bell curve as it's often called in that sense. And that's how the CASPer test is used to determine which people have the appropriate characteristics that are most suitable for teaching. It also explains why it's done in cohorts and why it needs to be done in batches in that sense, because you don't do it as an individual. It's done as a group each time. In preparing for CASPer, we might ask Josh to speak. Josh has undertaken the CASPer, and from your first-hand experience, Josh, what can you do to prepare for the CASPer?
Yeah, thanks, Damien. So preparing for the CASPer is probably where the majority of you listening now are at. Either you've registered for CASPer and now you're just preparing and waiting, or you're going to be submitting your application for CASPer after this webinar, hopefully. So one of the main ones is ensure you're familiar with the CASPer test and its purpose, because it's a 90-minute test, as was stated, and it's really good to wrap your head around what type of questions are going to be asked, how much time you've got to answer each question, what sort of questions will be asked, and just your time management, which was personally a big thing for me, because as a Year 12 applicant, when at the time I was going through SACs, and my teachers were heavily influencing us to do our SACs in a timed manner, preparing us for the exam. So I was quite familiar with how long it takes me to answer a question. So I would go into the CASPer website, and I believe there's 3 scenario test scenarios that you can do, and you can do them over and over again. You can put a timer on for 5 minutes, and you can answer the question, and you can kind of get an understanding of how long it takes you to answer the question, whether you need the full 5 minutes, or whether you can write up a really good response in 2 minutes and then spend that time just thinking about your response or just catching your breath. That was the main thing for me. I think halfway through, after that about 45-minute mark, I kind of needed to, my hands were cramping up and I needed to just take a breath so I could answer a question. I believe one of the questions was my role model and why. That was a really big one for me. I'd thought about that for my teaching application. So I could do that really quickly in about 3 minutes, and I could take that 2 minutes just to catch my breath, breathe, stretch my hands, stretch my back out, and then, go back into it. Another thing is organizing your computer. That's a big one, because you need to make sure you've got your webcam up and a good internet access, because it's all online. So you'll need to make sure that they're all secure. And if there's problems during the application process, and even before the CASPer test actually starts, you'll have a couple scenario-based examples that you can do. And if you've got some internet troubles there, you've got a web chat on the CASPer test. So if you're having troubles, if halfway through your computer freezes, if your mouse doesn't work, you can type in the chat function, just say, hey, my computer's not working, I need some help, and they'll get back to you in that.
Thanks, Josh. And it takes about 90 minutes to complete the test, is that right? Yeah,
that's correct. So you've got the full 90 minutes, 5 minutes per question, but you've also got a break in between, which is completely optional. If you're quite calm, cool and collected and you're ready to go, you can totally smash out the whole CASPer test in one go. For me personally, I needed a break. I need to go get a drink of water and I need to get up and stretch. So I took that 15 minutes just to catch my breath, but it's totally up to you.
So I can see quite a few questions coming in about, those scenarios that you're talking about. So maybe we could have a look at those scenarios and talk about those a little bit more from your experience, Joe.
So,
sorry, Josh, I meant. Oh no, Joe, sorry about that. Joe, it's over to you.
This one's me, sorry. So this is the type of question that you might receive, so the text-based ones. So think of a time when you had to make a sacrifice in order to accomplish a goal, and then these are the questions that these are the things that they're asking you to do. So briefly describe the situation and the sacrifice you made. Do you regret your decision to make the sacrifice? Why or why not? And did you learn anything from this situation that can be applied to your desired career, and explain your response? So these are the types of questions, and I think Josh was just talking before about a question that he had talking about a role model that he had. So these are the types of things that you might be asked. So have a think about these sorts of things. Do have a go at the practice ones that Josh was talking about as well, so that you start to get a bit of an idea of what questions. I mean, you won't, you might not get the exact question, but have a think about the types of things they would be wanting to know from you to be able to demonstrate your non-academic attributes, like your teamwork and collaboration, empathy for others, all of those sorts of things.
CASPer dates. Joe, when can we sit the CASPer test?
So we've got a number of dates here for Deakin. So all of these dates here are for school leavers and non-school leavers. So, and also if you're applying through VTAC, and if you're applying through direct through Deakin University.